Let's begin with the chapter Sociology and Society. What is sociology? Well, it is the scientific and systematic study of groups and group interactions, societies and social interactions, ranging from the personal small groups to very large groups. So, sociology studies human society as an interconnected whole and how society and the individual interact with each other. Or, in other words, it is the systematic study of society and the social interaction with each other. So, what is a society? Well, society is a group of people whose members interact with one another, reside in a definable area, and share a common culture. Now, one of the tasks of sociologists is to decipher the connection between a personal problem and a public issue. In your book, the relationship between a person's choice and attitude and the wider culture that shape the person's choices and perceptions is illustrated. So, the advice given to the student of what subject to take up is based on the job market, their gender, and their social background, and on what defines a good job. Now, what defines a good job varies from society to society. For some, it may mean a job that pays well, and for others, it is a job with social esteem, like, for example, the job of a doctor or a civil servant. So, to a sociologist, the personal decisions that an individual makes does not exist in vacuum. Social forces, cultural patterns, etc., put pressure on people to select one choice over the other. An individual and society are dialectically linked. And this is precisely what we have seen from the example above. The problem of choosing subjects in senior secondary school is not only an individual concern but also a broader public issue affecting students as a collective entity. This is what C. Wright Mill's sociological imagination seeks to unravel, that is, the connection between a personal problem and a public issue. In other words, if our private troubles are widely shared with others, then it will be found that these are common social problems and they arise due to the way our social life is structured. Then, at this level, they are best addressed as public issues that require a collective response to resolve. We belong to, in a sense, to more than one society. Say, for example, when we say our society, when you are among foreigners, then it means Indian society. In the context of fellow Indians, the term Indian society denotes a linguistic or religious or ethnic community or a caste or a tribal society. So, depending on which relevant society we are focusing on at that point in time, we have our contextual understanding. So, while mapping societies, we need to understand that there are pluralities and inequalities. In fact, inequality is central to differences among societies. These inequalities may be in the form of social, economic, or political disparity. Sociology is the study of human social life, of groups and societies. The subject matter is our collective behavior. Sociology is not philosophical reflections as observations of philosophers and religious thinkers are about what is moral, immoral behavior, what should be the desirable way of living, and what constitutes a good society. Sociology does concern itself with norms and values, but it does not delve into what it ought to be or view them as goals that people should follow. It is about the way norms and values function in the society. The sociologist does this by observing and collecting findings using an unbiased approach. This method is called empirical observation. Thus, sociology is a science bound by scientific rules of procedures that allow other sociologists to check or to repeat so as to develop the findings further. Sociological knowledge is also different from common sense knowledge. Common sense knowledge explanation are generally based on naturalistic or individualistic explanation, that is, the natural reasons for behavior. Common sense is unreflective since it does not question its own origin or ask itself, why do I hold this view? For example, explaining poverty from a naturalistic or common sense view would be that someone is poor because perhaps that person has low intelligence or is afraid of work or perhaps comes from a broken home. While a sociological approach would look at poverty arising out of the inequality existing due to the socio-economic position of that individual. Sociology has a systematic and questioning approach and relies on scientific investigation as it is greatly influenced by the development in modern science. Peter Berger, a well-known sociologist, stresses the need to be unbiased in your opinion, just like a spy, in order for the research to have some value. In order to have a better understanding of the discipline of sociology, it is important to look at the intellectual and material ideas that help shape this discipline. So let's trace the origin. The French scholar Auguste Comte is considered to be the founder of sociology. He believed that sociology would contribute to the welfare of humanity and provide a solution to all the social ills. The early sociologists and social anthropologists categorized societies into types and also sought to distinguish the stages in social development. They were influenced by the scientific theories of natural evolution. So, the two categories were the types of pre modern society and the types of modern society. Under the pre modern societies, we have hunters, gatherers, pastoral, and agrarian societies. And under the modern societies, we have the industrialized societies. So, this division into the pre modern and modern society rested on the assumption that Western societies were the most advanced and civilized societies. The second idea was that the society progressed in stages, and this was borrowed from Darwin's idea about organic evolution. So, here the society is compared to a living organism, and this organism passes through stages of growth. And in this way, we're looking at society as a system of parts with a given function, and this influenced the study of the social institutions like family and school, and social structures like, say, stratification. So, what we have is that empirical reality was studied. The third idea is that of enlightenment. So, what is enlightenment? It is an intellectual movement of reason and individualism. The advancement of scientific knowledge and the use of methods of natural sciences together could be used to study human affairs. For example, poverty could be seen as a social problem caused by human ignorance or exploitation, and therefore could be studied through the social survey method, and then it could be classified and measured, and furthermore the problem could be fixed. And furthermore, the progression in knowledge will remove all social problems. Now, this vision was of the founding father of sociology, that is Auguste Comte, and in his book Social Physics, he believed that sociology would contribute to the welfare of humanity. Now, let's look at the material issues that went into the making of sociology. First, the Industrial Revolution, that was based on a new dynamic activity, that is capitalism, was responsible for industrial manufacturing. Next, we have this capitalism that resulted in new attitudes and new institutions. When we talk about new attitudes, we see how the sustained systematic pursuit of profit became the prime motor, and how goods, services, and labor became commodities. That is, their use was calculated rationally. And when we talk about institutions, we're looking at the institution of market, which became the key instrument of productive life. So, this new economy that came into being was very different from the old economy. Life in pre industrial Britain had agriculture and textile as the chief occupation of the people, and most people lived in a village. So the society was kind of small and it was hierarchical, whereby the status and the position of the people was clearly defined. Since it was a small society, there was a close interaction between people. Now, all this changed because of the industrialization process, and a new order came into existence. This new order was marked by a degradation of labor and the wrenching of the work from the protected confines of the guild or the village and family. Also, there was a decline of the status of the common laborer and skilled craftsman. With this came the growth and expansion of urban centers, and this urban world that appeared in the horizon had soot and grime of factories, was overcrowded with slums, had bad sanitation, and general squalor. With the new urban world came a new kind of social interaction. In effect, the factory and the division of labor was viewed as a deliberate attempt to destroy the peasant, the artisan, the family, and the local community. The factory was like a barrack or a prison, and this kind of economic regimentation was not viewed favorably by the people. Karl Marx viewed the factory on one hand as oppressive and on the other hand as also potentially liberating, as the workers learned to work in a collective manner and also make efforts for better working conditions. The emergence of modern societies entailed the significance of clock time for social organization. That is, agriculture and manufacturing became set by the clock and the calendar. That is, there were set hours and days of work, and time became money. The punctual beginning of work was stressed upon in the new order. The work rhythm in the past was very different, where the hours of daylight and the deadline dictated the pace of the work. One thing to also note is that in India, the industrialization process led to the movement of people from the urban areas back into the rural areas. The Indian craftsmen were ruined by the influx of British machine manufactured goods. So they went back into the primary economic activity of agriculture for their subsistence. So, what is the importance of studying the beginning and growth of sociology in Europe? Well, the European society of the 18th and 19th century experienced tumultuous changes due to capitalism and industrialization, and the issues of urbanization and factory production were at the forefront. The global expansion of capitalism brought about uneven transformation of societies. Between 17th to 19th century, 24 million Africans were enslaved. And this is one of the notable movement of people from one country to another because of capitalism. In the 1800s, in India, people were forcibly taken against their will as indentured laborers to work on British plantations in distant countries, such as in Suriname, Fiji Islands, and West Indies. So, this is the dark side of capitalism, whereby, in the name of modernity and development, human beings were used as commodities and exploited by other human beings. Today, these migrants might bear an Indian name or have the physical appearance of an Indian, but their language and their mannerisms are totally different. So, for India's past, our history is linked closely to the history of the Britishers through the system of capitalism and colonialism. So, now let's look at the growth of sociology in India. One thing we understand that colonialism was an outgrowth of modern capitalism and industrialization. Therefore, the knowledge of them is required for understanding the social change in India. Karl Marx's comments on the impact of the East India Company shows that the impact of industrialization in India was not the same as in the West. The Indian textile industry was systematically ruined by the Britishers through the enactment of laws, by the inundation of the Indian market with mass produced factory made British textiles. Sociology in India had to contend with Western ideas and Western writings about Indian society that were not always correct. The Indian village was portrayed as a remnant of the European past, that is, it was still viewed as being in the infancy stage of development. The Indian village was portrayed as unchanging and static, which brings us to the distinction between sociology and social anthropology. To the Western sociologists, the standard definition of social anthropology would be the study of simple societies of non Western and therefore other cultures. As the Western perception of a society is one which is industrialized. According to M. N. Srinivas, this distinction between social anthropology and sociology could not be applied given the size and diversity. So, social anthropology in India was concerned more with the study of peasants, ethnic groups, social classes, etc. There is no rigid division between sociology and social anthropology in India. Now, let's move on to the scope of sociology. The scope of sociology is extremely vast, ranging from the micro interaction between two people to national issues such as unemployment and caste conflict, to global social processes such as the impact of electronic media on the young children or the entry of foreign universities on the education system of our country. Note, what defines sociology is just not what it studies, like family, trade unions, villages, but how it studies the chosen field. Now, let us look at sociology's relationship to the other social science disciplines. The thing to understand is that the division amongst the various social sciences are not that clearly defined. That is, that they cannot be straitjacketed into particular categories, as they share a certain degree of similarity in terms of concepts, interests, and methods. So let's look at them one by one. We start with sociology and economics. What is economics? Well, it is the study of the production and distribution of goods and services. The classical economic approach looks at the relation of the economic variables like price, demand and supply, output and input ratios, money flows, and secondly, the allocation of scarce goods and services within a society, that is, the economic activity. While the political economic approach seeks to understand economic activity in context of ownership of and relationship to means of production. So the objective of economics is to formulate precise laws of economic behavior. The sociological approach looks at the economic behavior in the broader context of social norms, values, practices, and interests. And you can say that this is what the advertisement industry makes use of in order to reshape lifestyles and consumption patterns. The feminist economics looks at how work in the home is linked to productivity outside. The defined scope of economics has helped it become a focused subject due to the exactness of their measures and precision of their terminology. Yet economists' predictive ability suffers because of their neglect of individual behavior, cultural norms, and institutional resistance, which sociologists study. Sociology provides a clearer, adequate understanding of the social situation, that is, through factual knowledge or improved grasp of why something is happening. Now let's look at sociology and political science. Conventional political science has two elements. One is political theory, which looks at the ideas about government from Plato to Karl Marx, and the second one is the government administration, that is, the formal structures of the government and the processes within the government. Now, the study of power in formal organizations is also another aspect of conventional political science. The sociologist studies the interrelationship between sets of institutions, including government ones. Sociologists like Max Weber focused on political sociology. The focus of political sociology is the actual study of political behavior. Political sociology undertakes the study of the political patterns of voting, the membership of political organizations, the process of decision making in these organizations, the sociological reasons for the support of political parties, and the role of gender in politics, to name a few. Now let's move forward to sociology and history. The historians study the past, that is, the concrete details of the past, and they try to delineate the actual events of how things happened. Sociology is the study of the contemporary or recent past, and it establishes the causal relationship between events. So, sociology abstracts from concrete reality. Conventional history has always been the history of kings and war, while in sociology, the core area of interest is the gender relations within the family and the change in land relations. Now let's move on to sociology and psychology. Psychology is the science of behavior of an individual, their learning, their intelligence, their motivations and memory, the nervous system and the reaction time, or the hopes and fears. All this encompass the subject matter. So we have social psychology that bridges the gap between psychology and sociology. It studies the way in which the individual behaves in social groups, collectively with other individuals. Sociology studies the way behavior is organized in a society and how the personality is shaped by different aspects of society. That is, the economic and political system, their family and kinship structure, their culture, norms, and values. Sociologist Emile Durkheim's study of suicide is noteworthy here as it left out individual intentions of those people who committed suicide to examining the social characteristics of these individuals, and thereby using an interdisciplinary approach. Now, let us look at sociology and social anthropology. Anthropology in most countries includes the study of archaeology, physical anthropology, cultural history, and the linguistic branches, plus all aspects of life in simple societies. Social anthropology and cultural anthropology is the study of simple societies. Note, the Western modern society was used as the benchmark in order to delineate the simple society. And using that, non European societies were perceived as exotic, barbaric, and uncivilized, and hence documented. Global changes have redefined sociology and social anthropology. Modernity as a process has affected the smallest village with the global processes. So, in that sense, it becomes difficult to define a simple society. Social anthropology tended to study simple society in all their aspects as a whole or on the basis of an area. Example, the Andaman Islands, the Neurs of Melanesia. We have the sociologist Bronislaw Malinowski, who established fieldwork as a distinctive method of social anthropology. So, this method entailed long fieldwork tradition and ethnographic research methods. When we look at sociology, it is the study of complex societies, and the focus is on the parts of the society like the bureaucracy or religion or caste or social mobility. The method used in sociological study is the survey method, and quantitative data is collected using statistics and questionnaires. Indian sociology is far more eclectic in borrowing from both these traditions. Indian sociologists often studied Indian societies that were both part of and not of one's own culture. Studying complex differentiated societies of urban modern India as well as the study of tribes in a holistic fashion. Note for India, sociology and social anthropology have had a very close relationship.